I am Kimberly Dutton, and today I'm interviewing Barclay DuPriest. It is June 25th, 2008. Thank you. So, my first question will be, please tell me how you came to live in Ashland.
Kim, I came to live in Ashland because I was married to my husband who had a job teaching school at Patrick Henry High School. But I came to Ashland actually before that because when my husband was a student at Randolph-Macon College and I was a student at Randolph-Macon Women's College in Lynchburg, which is now Randolph College, I would come down on the weekends to spend the weekends with him, and I spent most of my time at the KA house at Randolph-Macon. So I was familiar with the town, which was quite different. I do remember thinking back on where there was to eat and what there was to do when we came back in the 60s. There was one restaurant where the Wachovia Bank is now called Johnson's Restaurant, and right across from it where Fields Auto was something like the Dairy Freeze or something, and that was it. Everything where the UCrop Shopping Center was and everything was nothing but Carter Farm. It was nothing but farmland. But I came here and we got married right after graduation, and so I moved to Ashland right after that, which was in 1969, and we first lived in apartments, and then we were lucky enough to rent a house over in the neighborhood that I love. We live on Racecourse Street, 207 Racecourse Street, and have been there almost since we came to Ashland. When we had our rental house on Francis Street, we were across the street from Robert and Eloise Piccolo, who were both graduates of the college, and Eloise is a good person for you to interview, by the way. And it was really pretty special because they wanted to extend their back lot, and they bought this old house built in 1889 over on Racecourse Street just to get their back lot and to sell it, and found out that we wanted the house, and they took it off the market. We didn't even have the money for the down payment. They gave us the money for the down payment and helped us move across the street and move into the house when we didn't even yet own it, which gives you an indication of what the people are like in Ashland. And my friend Pick always said that good neighbors were the best investment that you could make, and making money on that house was not his object. He just wanted to keep his good neighbors. And so we lived in an old house, and that's where we raised our family over there. I stayed here, and I didn't really work until I had two sons, Rand, and my younger son, Tad, was 3 years younger than he was. When Tad was in the pre-primer, I guess, at Hanover Academy, that's where I taught and where the two younger Lindgren children go to school today. I went out there when he went to kindergarten, and I taught math there for 8 years. And that was a wonderful experience, too, because it was a tiny little school, and just a good place to teach and a good place to be. From the time we got to Ashland, I knew that this is the place that I wanted to be. To you today, Ashland is far different from what it was when we first moved here. And I was thinking back when I was just telling you about what was happening, how actually close I am to your age at the time that I'm talking about now. I guess it's just the friendliness in Ashland. As soon as you get into Ashland, if a young couple moves into Ashland, there are always people that are there. There's always somebody from churches coming to get you. There's somebody from the Ashland Junior Women's Club and the JCs coming to get you. There's always somebody that wants to involve you in the life of the town in every aspect that they can. There is, I don't know have you ever heard the words to the Ashland song? You don't know about where you get more for your money than you pay in your tax, and the best people live on both sides of the tracks. It's Ashland, where no one is a stranger long, where friends live side by side and join hands in song. Have you heard about the Ashland Variety Show yet? Okay, that's a song that was first written for that, and we people in Ashland sing our Ashland song with pride because it is Ashland, Virginia was a neighborhood. It's very different today. But I haven't gotten there yet. Let me think what we need to do before then. I was not working at the college then, but and I have been at Randolph-Macon College since 1985, since I became the bookstore manager then. So it's been a pretty long time. But we're part of the college life before then, as are many, many people in town. I cannot imagine anything better than being part of a college town, particularly a small liberal arts college in a small town. when my boys were little, we would come over to basketball and football games. And then it was neat for me because sometimes at night when my husband, the kids, a little break from me, I can remember hearing the poet laureate of England speak over here. I could come over. We could come to drama productions. There are a lot of benefits to living in a college town. So Randolph-Macon was a part of our lives before I actually came here while I was teaching school. One of the neat things that I did in the town, and I'm only telling you this just because it was important to the town and I remember it so well. For the bicentennial in 1976, I was the chairman of the Junior Women's Club. I was the chairman of the Ashland Bicentennial celebration, and we had a bang-up celebration. You wouldn't have believed it. We had, in a short amount of time, the celebration was held at Randolph-Macon College. It was held on the plaza of, well, not the Fountain Plaza, and the Fountain was here then. That was here even when I was in college and came here. It was on the the part that comes out from, we have graduation now in front of Mary Branch. We worked so hard on that thing. I wrote a reenactment of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. I called Broadway even and got permission to use some things from 1776. And we wrote and got costumes sent to us from Colonial Williamsburg, from places in North Carolina and South Carolina, and people loaned us those. People in town gave money, and we rented wigs for all the people. And the JCs, my God, were the people my actors. We only had a couple of practices, but they did a wonderful job. They were dressed great. We had Benjamin Franklin coming in his gout was such a problem. They carried him in on this little litter that they were bringing him in on, and we actually reenacted the whole thing. It was wonderful. The townspeople came out, and everybody was dressed up in colonial costumes. We sat down. I had members of the Richmond Symphony playing patriotic songs at exactly like 1 o'clock. The bells in all the churches and at Randolph-Macon rang, and everybody assembled there, and we reenacted it. And Tom Bass, Carlene's husband, was my narrator for that, and it was really neat because he said we're journeying back to Philadelphia now, 200 years, and the JCs came out and they froze in their costumes, and then they reenacted the thing. After that, after we had our patriotic songs and everything, we had a parade with banners and everything, and everybody dressed up from the college down by what's now the Welcome Center, and turned around and went to the town hall. And at the town hall, it was really pretty neat because somebody said to me before then, you should have a time capsule for this. And I still to this day cannot remember who told me about the man that lived outside of Ashland. His name was, I think it was James Custerer. And they said, you have no idea. This man is the guy who did hermetically sealed all of the stuff in Washington, D.C., and he also did the Gutenberg Bible. He did the actual Declaration of Independence. He had gone back, and he's a time capsule man. I called him up and said, we are going to have our bicentennial celebration, and it's going to be in something like 3 weeks or 2 weeks at that point. And he said, have I got a deal for you? And I said, what? He said, I've got a time capsule that you might want that you can have for this little town. And he said, but you need to give me $400. Can you raise $400? Now, we had already hit the townspeople for lots of money to pay for our costumes and everything else. And I said, sure, when do you need it? And he said, like by next week. The town, and when I told the townspeople what it was about, they were very excited. It was the time capsule that he had designed for the artifacts from the spacewalk. He had designed it for NASA, and it had a scratch on the top, and NASA had rejected it. So he said, for $400, he said, not only am I going to let this little town have the time capsule that was designed for them, he said, I'm going to do something that I have never done before. He said, whenever I have time capsules or whenever I am closing documents, I never do it in front of an audience. I wait until the people have left, they put in the artifacts, and then I hermetically seal everything. He was so excited that he lived near this little town that was going to do this. He brought all the things to hermetically seal it with the tubes going in and out and stuff like that. And we were there. We had, I think, it wasn't the old president of the college, former president of the college, Dr. Moreland was there, and our assistant mayor was there, I think, and we had other people there. Anyway, we hear the things that we put in the time capsule. And the time we put in church bulletins, we put in directories, phone books, we put in we had a photographer who took Polaroids. Of course, back in those days, we couldn't have anything to put in there on the same day. So we took pictures of everything that went on all that day, of everybody with the banners and the costumes and things, and we threw those in. Mr. Custer put in a bottle of wine. He also put in a $50 check. Do you know anything about another time capsule at the... Okay, remind me about that. I'll tell you about that, because that got blown out of proportion a little bit, and somebody thought it was a $5,000 check. It wasn't, but he said he wouldn't be alive when it was open, so it didn't matter. A little boy threw in his baseball cap, a Slurpee cup, tons of stuff. People all came in and put things in there, and he actually closed the time capsule. He advised us not to bury the time capsule because... more time capsules are never found after they've been buried than the ones that aren't. So it stayed over at the Ashland, and I guess it's still over there at the town hall. There's I guess before we ever had a jail or anything, a little holding cell or whatever. I think it's in that, and it's to stay in that. And I do need to leave instructions about that, because the instructions inside the time capsule say that the people in the town of Ashland, 100 years from July 4th, 1976, are supposed to gather and open the time capsule and hopefully have a celebration and create another one. When I'll just jump over time a little bit, just so you'll know what I was talking about earlier. For the 150th anniversary, there was great. I was getting emails from people that were writing articles for papers in Richmond and things, and they got our time capsule confused with one that apparently was buried at Ashland's last 25 years ago, maybe, or something. It was buried, yes, supposedly on the front lawn of the town hall. Now, nobody's been able. Woody Tucker, who is he is a town historian, he and Sarah Wright have been over there looking for it, but they have not been able to locate it, which is a good lesson to us. Don't bury your time capsules. That one was... I don't really know anything about that one, other than people called me many times thinking that our time capsule was that one, and the rumor went out to the Richmond paper. The guy writing the article said it was a $5,000 buried there, and it wasn't. I think they're just referring to Mr. Custer's $50 time capsule. Anyway, that was a great day. We had a breakfast all in costumes, and we had a big party. And after that, my neighbors, the Piccolos that I was telling you about in our neighborhood, started having a 4th of July celebration, which was wonderful. He had an immaculate lawn. The kids that played in my neighborhood, something I love about Ashland, and I grew up near Hampton, Sydney, out in a country on a farm. It was a rare occasion that people came home with me in the afternoons. There weren't any play dates or anything like that. I mean, very few. I would ride my horse around the farm. But when my boys were growing up, in my backyard, which didn't have grass for 15 years, I had 8 to 10 boys every day playing, and they grew up together, and a friendship was really formed there that to this day I can sit out on my deck sometimes after and imagine that I can still hear them playing in the dark almost, playing ball or playing Ghost in the Graveyard. That whatever that was their favorite thing with flashlights. It was a time when children were safe. People went all over town. We rang bells at night, but they were always at my house, so I didn't have to ring a bell. I'd send them home sometimes, but it was fun. And we had that celebration. They cut, and the Piccolos had Dr. Moreland, who was the old Randolph-Macon president, lived in our neighborhood, and everybody came and he had kegs of beer and hot dogs, and we played John Philip Sousa music, and we had patriotic programs. I was always in charge of that, and we had everybody in the neighborhood who was a veteran of the Korean conflict or the Vietnam or World War II. It was kind of an emotional time. We were a very patriotic neighborhood. We miss those times. He's gone. We miss those good times, but that's just typical of things that go on in Ashland. And Ashland has a little 4th of July parade today. Do you know about that? Oh my goodness! You'll be here. Are you going to be here on the 4th of July? Well, it's just a typical Ashland parade in that everybody in Ashland can be in the parade if they want to. There's a beagle brigade with beagles, and children can ride little tricycles and decorated those, and they have a lawn chair brigade that they do little exercises, flipping lawn chairs up, and it ends at our Hanover Arts and Activities Center, which is an important place for our town, and we have like pie eating contests and things then. Just a neat little small town atmosphere that makes this place really special. After that, I continued to teach school, and until I got my job at Randolph-Macon, which changed my life. When I got this job over here, I was teaching school, and I heard next door, the teacher next door, Liz Levin, say that her mother, Catherine Stevens, was retiring, and she was the bookstore manager at Randolph-Macon. She was married to Hugh Stevens, who was kind of like our legend. He was our coach, and we had the Hugh Stevens feel and she always laughs. To me, she's the most important member because she hired me and taught me about the bookstore. But of course, the college says Catherine was wonderful because she was the wife of Hugh Stevens. She was a great book manager, but she said, I knew nothing about it. I didn't know. I was just lucky I convinced the treasurer, Mr. Ball, and Catherine Stevens to hire me. And when they got here, she said, "Do you type?" And I said, "Well, no, do I need to?" And she went, "Oh, my God, I'm glad that they didn't ask me certain questions before I got the job." I came here and I was terrified. I really was. I didn't know anything. I knew about 5th, 6th, and 7th graders, but I didn't know anything about college students. And I thought, maybe college students were some people to be feared. Lord, did I find out. It just took me 1 week on the job when the cash register broke and I ran into what's now Macon Coffee, and there was a student working in there then. It was open all summer, and to Buddy Teastra, I'll never forget. I'd never met him, and I said, "Please help me." I was crying, and he came over. It was the place that I was meant to be. There is nothing more fun in your whole life as you get old, and now I'm 61 years old. I was 38 when I came here. I cannot believe it, that I'm so old. But what can be more fun than spending your every single day with people who are 18 to 22 years old? I mean, you don't have to be with grown-ups. My mother said that I never quite grew up, and that when I got a job over here, it slowed the maturation process, and I never did because I never was quite as mature as she wanted me to be. But it was great, and the college has made a monumental difference in my life. When my boys were real active in sports, and tons, like playing 3 or 4 years. So I spent, my life was either spent mostly doing stuff at the college after I was teaching or going to their games and their sporting stuff and doing that. My boys went to school in Richmond from the 8th grade on. They went to St. Christopher's in Richmond, and so I spent a lot of time going in there. My older son, Rand, decided he wanted to go to Hampden-Sydney, so he went to Hampden-Sydney, our big rival, and so I had to put up with that for 4 years. But actually, since my home was there, and I have more of my relatives went to Hampden-Sydney than to Randolph-Macon, but shoot, there's no loyalty. There's no split loyalty in our family. Rand said it's everybody against him. But he went to Hampden-Sydney, and actually my younger son, Tad, had planned on going to Hampden-Sydney with his best friend, Brad. He was 3 years younger than Rand. Brad was killed in an automobile accident, and it was very devastating to my younger son. His junior year. It was almost impossible for him to just carry on without him. He was his soulmate. And he decided after 2 years that he would go without Brad, that he couldn't go to Hampden-Sydney, and he would come to Randolph-Macon. And he says this is the best decision that he ever made. And I know that he did. I know it was a great healing time for him, because I know that the Randolph-Macon students were so good, because all of his friends today still remember stories about Brad, and I know he told them, he told me, he said, "Mom, this was the place to come. This was the place," even though it was in his hometown, he lived on campus, and he said, "This is the place where the people cared enough to help me heal." But then the worst thing happened on July the 20th, 1992, after his freshman year. Tad was killed, almost to the very day that Brad was, and that was one of the hardest times in my life. I was in the bookstore when the policeman came to tell me, and it was an awful time, but I cannot tell you. The only reason I'm telling you about this is to tell you what the college has meant to me in regard to that, the college and the people in this town. I couldn't have made it without them. When we lost Tad, there were like, the Richmond newspaper thing said there were like between 1,500 and 3,000 people at his funeral, and it was just a graveside funeral. But he was a really funny guy, and he was a great football player and a great baseball player, and he lettered in football and baseball his freshman year, and he was a KA, as was my husband. So it just turned out that way. Anyway, Randolph-Macon was so good to me. They planted trees. They put up a scoreboard. They have MVP awards in Tad's name. They have a million things. I can't. It helped me so much just to know that people cared and that this college was so special. I feel sorry for people who lost. It's hard for anyone to lose a child. And I was lucky to have such a network around me. And I always worry about those people who just are not as fortunate enough as I was to have Randolph-Macon and to have Ashland and to have the people at St. Christopher's. Today, and it's been Tad will be next month it'll be 16 years since he was killed. And I'm telling you this because Randolph-Macon kids started this. Last year, actually one of the girls that went to high school with him at St. Catherine said she had thought about it for years and years that he loved kids so much and that she wanted to do something special for Tad. And so she contacted his fraternity brothers at Randolph-Macon, many who had gone to school with him. Mm-hmm. And those kids, all who were under 35 years old, about under 36 years old, decided to start having an annual event to benefit children with cancer. And they were basically Randolph-Macon kids who did that, who are now 36 years old. And the ASK, which is the Association for Support with Children with Cancer, told them that they would be phenomenal if they could raise $8,000 the first year, and they raised $38,000 the first year. And they've had the second one this year, which has golf tournaments in the morning, the afternoon, a party at Tredegar. And this year, and only the second year, they raised close to $70,000. And that just shows you, and I've told the people at Randolph-Macon in the development office, don't take my Tad DuPriest fundraisers away from me, because President Lindgren and Cheryl were at the fundraiser, and I was saying, don't look, they've done such a great job, and I do want them to help the college. Mm-hmm. But it's been so good. People from the college back from that time are playing a part in my life now. Now, back to what Randolph-Macon. My goodness, there is nothing more fun than working in the bookstore. And I really, despite what people think, used to do a lot of work in that bookstore. I was the only full-time employee for a long time. I ordered the textbooks. Didn't like doing that, but I ordered the textbooks. And the bookstore was only open till like noon in the summertime. And then I just did work in my office afterwards. And then I said, this is crazy, because people tried to come in. Customers wanted to come there. We didn't have shelves. We didn't have anything hanging on the wall. And we certainly didn't have Vera Bradley or Vineyard Vines or all the stuff we have now. The sad part is we have exactly the same space that we had when I came all those years ago. But we are hoping that somewhere in the master plan, the new student union will be something really important. It's important to me not just because of the bookstore, but I think that you all deserve something a lot better than that campus center. If you go other places, you'll see that. One of the things that I'm not happy about, one of the few things I'm not happy about with Randolph-Macon, I've watched a lot of changes at Randolph-Macon and a lot of changes in our town. Our new president is really good because he loves the students and he is involving everybody in the community, the Randolph-Macon extended community in the town and everything, and I think he has great plans for us. I remember back at the days when the kids were trying to get graduation to be outside. That's how I got on the graduation committee, because I was always running my mouth about Hampton Sydney's graduation, which I'd just seen, which was wonderful. And we used to have baccalaureate in a church in Richmond where it was a beautiful setting, but that meant on the day before nobody came to this campus. People showed up for graduation at 10 o'clock on graduation day and packed up and left. And I just said, man, we need to get everybody back on campus because, and it really is, people need to be together for that one last time. So eventually then we did that, and we had graduation out on front campus, and now we have it. Have you been to graduation?
No.
It's wonderful. Your graduation will be wonderful. It's down in front of Mary Branch and out around the fountain, and it's truly wonderful. We changed that and a lot of other things. Building the Brock Center was a wonderful addition. and we've been in Crenshaw forever, but God knows it was never air conditioned, and we never had those great seats and things. Sadly, the campus center is exactly what it has been before, and I think it's hard to change. And anyway, we will see. I'm anxious for us to get into a new campaign and get some things done. Dr. Moreland, the statue of the little man that's out here by the library, he was an important president of our college. I went to college with his granddaughter, and he was here, and I'm glad that we have that. That reminds me of him a lot. The college does a lot of good things for the town. Number one, we let the town use the Blackwell Auditorium for the Ashland Variety Show. Have you ever been to the Ashland Variety Show?
Not yet.
That occurs every other year, and it's been going on for however many years. And you got to interview Sue Watson. She'll be a good one for you to do that, to interview about that. I was the stage manager for the Variety Show for about 10 years, which means probably about 5 times every other year, till I had all my leg problems, which is fun. Everybody in there is somebody from town, from 5-year-old children on up to Sarah Wright's age. Everybody's on up there, and it's kind of a hard job herding 250 people on and off the stage, because nobody's getting paid, and they don't really want to listen to you. They kind of want to just see their children's acts. But that's a wonderful thing that Sue Watson does, and all the proceeds from that go to the Hanover Arts and Activities Center. Have you ever seen that? Okay, and that used to be the old Baptist church. And as a matter of fact, the last person married in that church before it was no longer the Ashland First Baptist was Dr. Brenda Gilman, and she and her husband Larry were married there in the last ones. And then through the efforts of the Ashland Junior Women's Club, that was restored, and we used to have a little theater in there. It still has a stage, but now that's a real popular place for people, and it's beautifully restored. At one time, that was the library. Before we had the Richard Gillis Library, where that is now, the library was in the Hanover Arts and Activities Center over there. I remember that well, and we were lucky to we've always had a good library. That's a really important thing that Ashland has, I think, in the library, and special programs there. I remember doing an ad for the paper of talking about loving to shop in Ashland. I loved to ride my bike when my boys were little, and it had the little seat on the back. I mean, I loved riding downtown Ashland over here by the college, and even up by we didn't have the U-Crop Shopping Center. It was just, we thought the Henry Clay Shopping Center was like, where break time is now. We thought that was wonderful. We had a big grocery store there, and we had the pharmacy where the Piccolos, my next door neighbor, had that. And that was like just a really big deal. When U-Crops came in that shopping center, it was good. But the main thing that impacted us the most heavily and upset our little town was Walmart.
Yes.
And my husband was, I'll go back about that a little bit. My husband and Woody Tucker and Jim Smith are the hometown boys, they call themselves, whatever, and they sang the old song about Ashland every other year at the variety show. They make up songs about my hometown, and they're usually rather funny, sometimes sarcastic or sardonic things about happenings in town. And even if I remember when Nina Peace was our judge, and they used to make fun of her driving, and they stopped one year, and she called up and said, "Hey, no publicity is better. Bad publicity is better than none. Why aren't you saying about me?" But anyway, they were involved when, about when PBS came to do a special in our town, and their song, it started out with their singing the song about Ashland, and it showed the great effort that we put up to try to keep Walmart from coming. It's not that we wanted to per se keep Walmart from coming. We have a Walmart 10 minutes down the road and a Sam's Club down there, and everybody was so interested in, always is, in preserving the small town nature, of our town, the small town atmosphere. And it was a very, very sad time for our townspeople. They were there. Maybe you'll have to watch that thing. I'm sure there's a copy of it here in the library, to see the townspeople with their signs sitting there at the last vote saying, "Please vote no." When people were out there and they're packed out of the town saying, "Please, we just don't need this. We just need to keep our small town atmosphere." And I can tell you right now, it has changed. Some things, maybe not as many businesses have gone belly up as we thought, thank goodness. But the traffic is certainly something, and now the road is built out there. I can personally say that while we were concerned more about other businesses, and their business has grown less, it's been a major impact on the bookstore. I used to sell music. I used to sell posters. I used to sell, we're going to cut out the cards now and whatever else, something else I used to have. And as soon as Walmart came, the supply things are right down. There's no way that a store that's providing things for 1,100 people can compete with them that is providing things for millions and millions and millions of people. Like they can offer packs of paper that costs far less than we had to even pay cost to get our stuff here in the quantities of 48 or whatever we get. So it's taken its toll on that. I think at first lots of town people said, "Oh, I won't darken the door of Walmart." I don't think that's the way it is now. I think people will go there. I do think it made a significant change to our town, and it caused us a lot of worry. I think it would have kept us all together and unified. Everybody kind of grew hopeless there at the time of that. But I remember that's when, I think Ashland Coffee and Tea had just started, and people were hanging around there and talking about, it brought the town together. And this town is always together. Politics is interesting in this town. It's always who's running for town council, and changing the complexion of town council is exactly what happened. If people say that your vote and exercising your voting franchise doesn't make a difference, they're wrong. The town councilmen and they were men who voted to let Walmart in, are all no longer on town council and have not been for years. The voters spoke after that. They were not, our vision of Ashland, and most people's vision of Ashland, that's probably not a good thing to put in a general history of Ashland, because they did other important things for town. But anyway, things have changed, and it's nice. And we've had two recent women mayors, and with Dean Keed and Melvin Hall, we have had two African American members of our town council, and we have a newly elected lady, one of those. So things around here. That's one thing I think people will tell you. Maybe Sarah Wright, that race relations have always been good in this town. Even back historically, Sarah will tell you, I know over in one part of town, there are two homes that two black ladies owned back long years ago, 50 and 60 years ago, right in the middle of a white neighborhood, and it was just fine. Nobody ever thought anything different about that. It was always good, but which other people told me that would have been a rarity in any other neighborhood. So I think that it's a great place to be. And I think, I'm trying to think about the college now. Surely I've left something. Do you have anything you want to ask me?
Yes,
specific?
I do.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you had questions. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Go ahead.
How do you think the college students' lifestyle and makeup have changed over the years?
Very interesting to me. That's been very interesting to me. The lifestyle of the students, I think, today is rather tame compared to the way it was. When, of course, things were a little different. When I was in college, the drinking age was, I guess it changed to 20. It was 18, and then even if you were 18, you could have 3.2 beer, which was lower content. And the very fact that you could go and drink and it was not such a big deal. And I think people did party a lot, certainly. And I went to school in the 60s, and I'm sure that there were a lot of drugs done. I personally didn't do them, and I actually didn't witness that much in Randolph-Macon in the 60s. I did in the 70s. Before I came here, when my husband was the advisor, to the K House, I noticed then a lot of townspeople would come in and try to get in the fraternity houses then. But when I came in 1985, we had kegs out in front of Mary Branch. We had a big Camptown weekend. The Camptown races were important. Do you know about those?
Yes.
All right, so, okay. When Camptown was over, we still had what we called Camptown weekend here at the college, and they had bands and kegs of beer, and I can remember Dean Andrews was out there. We were all the faculty. It was like faculty and staff members were out there with the kids, and we had food, and it was crazy. The one thing I remember back then, and even before then, when I came here when I was in college, as far as the fraternities go, There weren't any sororities then. But as far as the fraternities go, and I always thought this was such a good thing. Everyone was welcomed everywhere. There was no restriction. You went. It made it a really closely knit campus. Mm-hmm. You could start out. I spent most of my time in the KA house, but if everybody said, let's go to the Lambda Chi house for a minute and listen to that band, everybody was welcomed over there. There were no guest list and things. Now, I realize that is dictated by that's a national policy dictated by that's not a college policy. But things were, it was people could, if it were a party weekend, and there were lots of party weekends. Bands, there were tons of bands, because I would always hear them over at my house. I can hear them over on Racecourse Street. But there was a flow of everybody all around the college, and everybody was welcomed. You didn't have to be in a fraternity. And later on, you didn't have to be in a sorority. You didn't have to do any of that stuff. You were just welcomed, and it was time. There's much more restriction now, or there has been in the last 10 years here, on student activity. It's much harder to have a party. There are many more restrictions. I am certainly the first person to say that if that prevents horrible things from happening to students, people developing alcohol problems anyway, then it's worth it. But it did make me sad. Mm-hmm. Dr. Martin, when he was our president, when he was hired to be our president, and I can say this, I say this with assurance that had he not been chosen, whomever the board of trustees chose to be that president would have come in here with a plan to clean up the social life at Randolph-Macon because of the Princeton Review things. Yeah. Now, I can say, from my observations of the Princeton Review, I used to watch the people out there taking those surveys. People would come out there, and they would take them sometimes early in the morning, and I guess the people that were really the party animals weren't there or not. There were a lot of people who cared nothing about partying. In fact, didn't want to party, and certainly that is their right, and their opinion is something that's valuable to me too. But they filled out a lot of those surveys. They were the ones saying, yes, this is from their perspective, everything was out of control at this college. And then there were those fruitcakes from some of the fraternities that came in and said, oh yeah, we binge drink every night. And when you fill in a thing that says that, they take the results and the Princeton Review brings them back. Now, you know much better than I what life is really like here at Thin, but I can tell you it was never as bad as it and when I say bad, I just mean there was never as much blatant drinking like over as it was earlier. Now, we did have a tailgate that was down in where part of where the parking lot is for the Brock Center, and all around there, and it was a big tradition at Randolph-Macon. During the football games, the girls were all dressed up. That's why everybody's all dressed up today in those high heels, and they went over there, and there was nobody carding anybody, and it was very blatant underage drinking, and people were getting smashed. And the one of the problems with that was not the fact. I mean, there was a problem in that underage people were drinking and drinking too much. But we are in a town. We always compare things to Hampton, Sydney, and I always do, into Washington and Lee, who was much more lenient on their students. Dr. Martin, who had the job of cleaning up everything, because the trustees told him to do that, because the Princeton Review, which indicated, and they published that in, I remember in magazines, like National Public came out, we always have this huge ranking, which I can tell you, my Hampton Sydney son told me there is unfairness. I know well enough that that's not the way it happened. And I used to go to fraternity parties here in the 80s and into the 90s we would have air band contests, and I would be there like with a professor or Champ or one of the ladies that works in a dining hall. We'd be, like Miss Connie. It wasn't Miss Connie, but somebody like that. We'd be judging airband contests. We were always there, but there was no restriction. There was nothing like I'm going into a panic, like, oh, am I here with somebody who's underage drinking or what? I don't do that anymore. We don't, go to fraternity parties and things anymore, which is kind of too bad, because we were kind of like the tie over of when I was in college. You had, not here, but like even mainly here for a while, you had chaperones. There were grown-ups that were there. we were in that transition where we were all just still welcomed, but now nobody, very, very few faculty or staff members would go to a fraternity party because I guess you just don't want to be liability or whatever. You don't want to have to be responsible for reporting on somebody or anything. And anyway, I think the social life now has returned to. I'm glad that tailgating is back. I'm glad it's restricted to 21, and I mean, people are obeying the rules but President Lindgren has given people a chance to get together. There was a big disconnect in the last 10 years as some of the fraternities were shut down, and without the tailgate, they had no place to meet. I'd be in my little bookstore tent out there on the field. They'd come and say, "Have you seen so-and-so? Tell him to meet me back here." The kids were unhappy. Dr. Martin did what he had to do. I mean, what he was told to do. And but we realized gradually, the young alumni, and working with Susan Down and the alumni, realized that the college needs to be able to have social gatherings that do involve alcohol for people who are of age, who are the age to drink. So, therefore, we do, and our things have come back. But I don't want it to sound like that I am a party animal. But we did lose that. We lost that connection there for a while, and I think that's back. But as far as kids today, compared to kids in the 60s and even in the 80s, I think you all are as good as gold. Anyway, what's next? Or is there anything more about that?
Yeah. What do you think about town reactions to the partying? Is there any problem?
There used to be I never noticed that there was a big problem at all. I never, and I can say I could hear the bands over at my house, and I wasn't particularly close. I never noticed that anybody complained about that. Except for the people who live on College Avenue. Now, yes. I know that and that's a beautiful avenue, College Avenue down there with all the doctors' houses down there. In fact, all of those houses were on the house tour last year. They used to complain about the kids, I guess, when Hardee's first came going down there, and they complained about people. They complained when the Phi Cap House was there, which is now one of our, it was the International House now. I think it's going to be Brothers for Change next year. And there were some complaints. Yes, I do think that there have been times when students have been, if a student is totally drunk, if anyone, whether a student or not, is drunk, you do things that are irresponsible and that would not make you popular with neighbors. I do think that to give the college a totally bad name is absolutely crazy. Out of 1,100, and when we had problems with drugs, which we had when we had some drug raids and things, out of 1,100 kids, you're going to find out of 1,100 grown-ups, you're going to find bad people. Out of 1,100 young people, you're going to find bad people. I do think that at times, I don't think that there was ever, I would be curious to find out what townspeople said to you in response to that. My opinion is that the townspeople would think that having the college here is a far bigger plus than any negative that would result from anything that they would deem inappropriate behavior by students. I have often longed for this thing because I think our town would be the perfect place for this to be. I know at the Naval Academy, when all of the freshmen come in, whatever they call the freshmen, their first year that they're there, they contacted people in the town of Annapolis, and they're paired up with them. Do you know about that? They have them, all of the men and women at the Naval Academy have like a surrogate mother or father or both in town that is there for them for 4 years. They take care of them. They go over and visit them. They have them to their home for dinner. And it's just really special, and at graduation is packed with not only with the real parents, but all of these people who have sort of like grandmothers that have adopted students. And then then the Naval Academy students have invited them on campus. I think this is a town where that could work. I think we could pair, everybody who wanted one could have an adoptive grandmother in this town or something like that. And I just always thought that was something I always dreamed of that I thought could work here, because I think it would. But I think that for a while, I think that the townspeople didn't realize about what a financial, well, and of course, a financial impact the students have on the town. I mean, like you can tell the day after everybody leaves for the summer, the day after graduation too. I mean, Ucrops and cafe is not very busy anymore, and the stores are not. And the people at Rite Aid say they can really cut down on their beer sales then. But since we were talking about that, but it is like it has. That I think the townspeople more and more and more are enjoying coming to the athletic things that Randolph-Macon. And I think what was really good is if we do things like last year at fall break, when we don't have a game this year, but when we didn't have a game, that we sent the word out that all townspeople could come to the game free, and they came. And some of the football players some of the little kids from their churches brought buses in to see them, and we had a great crowd for a game that we would have had nobody, and we won. But I think that encouraging or doing things to improve town-gown relations is good, and I know that. I know the town is always mindful. John Alatis, the treasurer of the college, is my boss. And so every time the college tries to acquire a new piece of property, you have to go through the town, and you have to go through the town meetings. And I know they're always cautious about that, about what we're going to do if we buy another house on Mullen Drive, or are we going to let more than 3 people live in it? Mm-hmm. Because then, which we easily could, but then they view that as possibly as something problematic for a neighborhood setting. So we have to work with them on that. But I think that I think that the town's reaction to the college is becoming more and more positive as the college opens it up more. The Strawberry Fair. Well, here's another example, and I'm sure you're shaking your head, so you know about the Strawberry Fair. And did you see the Strawberry Fair this year?
No,
it was so hot. It was awful. I used to have a tent at the Strawberry Fair, but now that the Strawberry Fair is on the street, so we just keep the bookstore open. We were the only people that did any business because it was so hot. It was over 100 degrees, and it was an awful day for it this year. But it's a wonderful thing. The Strawberry Fair started out back when I was a school teacher, long before I came here. And the college let the town have the football field for that. And from there, they moved on the front campus, which was gorgeous. I mean, you're right out there, and all of those vendors are right there, and the sidewalks. And they thought it was beautiful. And we found out that they were doing an awful lot of damage. 40,000 people can do an awful lot of damage to your trees and those old oaks that were out front. So we moved it around the fountain, more over there, and they still did some damage, and we moved it finally out on the street. Now, there were some disgruntled townspeople when we moved them off of the front. And that really, I was always a champion for the town. Every time I'd hear somebody complain about that, I'd go, we didn't charge them anything for that. It was a wonderful service the college did. But we did have to protect our trees. Mm-hmm. Anyway, many of which we lost doing Katrina. No, not Katrina. What was our...
Isabel?
Isabel. And remind me to talk about that if anybody hadn't. That was an awful time. But anyway, they love it on the streets now, and now everybody's saying, thank you, town. Thank you, Randolph-Macon. Because without the college, we couldn't have the variety show. We couldn't have the Strawberry Fair, which brings many, many, many people into town. And we couldn't have a good place for people to come to see sporting events, and we do let the college lets the Kiwanis Club uses SDs upstairs. I mean, there are lots. The college provides a lot of things. I think one thing we talked to the master planners about, and I don't think it's on the master plan now, is we wish that we had a huge facility with a ballroom and things, and enough place to feed people that we could have even more things come here that would attract people to campus to actually get some more publicity for us. There's something I said, don't let me forget that, and I forgot.
Hurricane Isabel?
The what?
Hurricane Isabel?
Oh, that day was just the college. You cannot imagine how the college looked on that day. Or our whole town. That was like there was a tree down in it missed my house, but all in our front yard. And we were without electricity in my neighborhood for close to a week. In the college, we couldn't come. And when I went over to the college, I could not believe the old trees. I mean, I think there were about 40 of them. Maybe they're down in this car. The kids' cars were smashed, and for a while, the students, it was a rather festive party atmosphere for the first night, I guess. No class. You couldn't have classes. You mean that we didn't have electricity for days, but it grew old really fast. People need to take showers, and you need to have food. And Estes was trying to bring food to the students, but that was when with the trees down, you saw things that could never really be placed. Those trees were really, really old, and our campus, though beautiful today, was a lot more beautiful before Isabel. That was Plus that lived through them, and then we lived through the sniper. When the sniper it was a hard time, and the kids stayed in their they were supposed to stay in their dorms. We had. I remember when we had that one drug raid when they had, and that was like a sting operation that the town. There was a student who had been caught with drugs, and that nobody knew about this. The town, Dr. Martin didn't know about this. I can remember his saying that day when we had like a town meeting afterwards. The sheriff's department sent her back in here as like a stooge, and she tried to solicit people to get drugs from her, to get things, that was part of her thing. And it worked in the college. Those students were dismissed immediately, and that was not a good time for publicity for the college, but it kind of was a wake-up call. I don't know about, I know very little about drugs on campus today. I know that when we had a town meeting after that, students said that there was a lot of drug use on campus because that we were so restrictive on the social policies in Nash that people went in their rooms and did drugs. So I don't know. And I know this is you can just get the stuff out of this interview and not even talk about it. But that was a time when our campus was beautiful, and then that was a very, very sad time. But we're planting new trees all the time, and and we've got all the bricks with everybody's name on them, and that's quite something. The President Lindgren's gotten one donor to give us that money, and it's going to, my understanding is the bricks are going to go back until the very first college class that was here. And Dr. Scanlon's history is a very good one. I always like to have that handy, and I read most of that so I can answer questions in the bookstore.
I read that.
But you've read that. But it's kind of cool that we have this college that's here on the railroad tracks, that the railroad gave us the money, and I think it's neat that I would imagine we're probably the only college in the country that has a seal that has a building that's not even on our campus, which is, have you ever been to Boydton to see the ruins? I went there one time to see those ruins, and that was kind of neat. But the story about, I think it's neat that our college was co-ed. I mean, it was an all-male school and became co-ed, and there are stories. I'll have to recommend you somebody to talk to about that. The funny stories about when the girls first came, and when the women first came to Randolph-Macon, which was actually, I missed that. I graduated in 1969. They came in 1971, and I didn't come back here officially till 1985. But the girls, said the girls had to be in their dorms at 11 o'clock, whereas the men could do anything, they want. That didn't last very long. The women had sit-downs in front of the president's house or in front of Peel Hall, and the next year the fishtails came out, and there weren't any restrictions on the women. Those women made up their minds. They said, we are, things are going to be equitable around here, and they really are. They were our pioneer women, those first women, and they are very active, like as trustees now, and pretty powerful women. I noticed I thought it was wonderful. I could notice, it was fun to come here when this was an all-male school, particularly since I went to an all-women's school. I do think that, and I can remember as a person in town, the day that the word came out that women were going to be allowed to come to Randolph-Macon, you would have thought the world was going to end. And the newspaper, like our boys' school right here, and we're going to let women come. Wisest decision this school ever made. It didn't take long. It didn't take more than 3 or 4 years for women to be president of the SGA and editor of the paper and everything responsibility, and grades went way up. The women, the influence of women, it's been wonderful, and I can't imagine it not being that way now. And that was certainly, even though I believe that was as is often the case, that was a financial decision. Things were things were not going well for the college, and they said, okay, let's let some women come in here, and darn if it didn't perk everything back up and make everything a lot better. And I just think it's wonderful. I would hate to be in a single sex college today. What could be more fun than having men and women come into the bookstore? I certainly don't do that. But anyway, that was a big, big deal that day. I remember in town when that happened. But the town, anything that goes on at the college is a big deal to the town. Either they can say, "Oh, they shouldn't be doing that," or "This is the greatest thing." But I think we're in a real era of good feeling, which is good, and I think it can only go forward as far as the college and the town are. I know that with the master plan, when we were looking at the college of the future, it would involve probably closing streets in Ashland, and the townspeople the town officials seemed pretty responsive to considering that idea, but you have to reroute traffic down that road. I don't know whether the people who live in North Ashland up there, what they might complain about the noise. I don't know. I was just thinking about most people don't. And of course, I forgot what your question was. Go ahead. Give me another one.
Did the college go co-ed under Luther White?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think they did under Luther White. Yeah, I believe, or either right after he left. That was not. Yeah, they did. But Liddell Payne was here for 18 years, so he was here with most of those young women who came back. Actually, some of them he saw come back and come from the time that they were here with him, come back and be on the board of trustees while he was still here. Mm. We've had very interesting presidents. Dr. Moreland was he wasn't, I don't remember him, but I just know him because he was my neighbor. Cute little guy, and he was like a deeply religious man. The Methodist Church influence was his thing, and of course education was too, but he was really neat. And then came Dr. Payne, who was like your quintessential college president. He was just, and he would come in the bookstore every other day and talk to the students too. He was a student's president too, but not to the extent of President Lindgren. But he was an English major professor, and he would go around and we would engage in witty repartee all the time, and he was funny, and he sang and whistled to work and stuff, and he was funny, and he did a lot of good things. As soon as he left, Dr. Martin was very different. Dr. Martin was very, very...
I've heard about him.
After, in retrospect, I think a lot of people have... who thought he was too... Dr. Martin was really kind of basically shy, and he'll be the first one to tell you that. He said to me one time, I really should be maybe doing research in a cubicle. But he did. He walked with his head down. It was funny. It was interesting because he had been a president of Moravian. He was certainly a nice man. He was a man on a mission with cleaning up the social, where, that, of course, made him unpopular with students and young alums right then, but the president's house wasn't really open to much at all, anything like that, as far as that. And his wife, she had her life. Now, Dr. Payne's wife was involved in Dr. Moreland's wife did everything free. She made cookies for everybody, invited the students down, because she thought that was part of her job. When Jean Payne, whom I adore, as well as the others, came here, she said if she was the president's wife and she was going to do the social things, she wanted to be the event planner for the college, and she got paid. She went to work every day in an office, and she planned things that involved the president's house. Then when Dr. Martin's wife came, Susan was not a part. She didn't do that, and she wasn't involved in the planning, and she didn't go to as many things. The Lindgrens... Cheryl doesn't get paid for anything. She didn't do anything, and she has that house open. I bet there is somebody in the president's house 5 days a week at night. I don't know how they have a life, but they do. They really do, and I think it's very fun to have children and dogs back at we had a dog with the Martins. They brought Angel in, and that was good, but it's fun to have children back there. Dr. Moreland had children there. Now, when I jumped from Dr. Moreland to Dr. Payne, Dr. White was in there too. I just wasn't a part of the college then and didn't know him. But we've had different presidents, but I think we're moving in the right direction now. The college doesn't have the same opportunities like as Hampden, Sydney, and Washington Lee, in that we are landlocked by the town. I mean, if we had more space, if we had more room, I think it would be easy to you don't have to sit down and close a street or think, all right, where are we going to put a new dorm? What can we do here? The master plan will help with that, but and it does make us, like the boys in Hampden, Sydney, get away with murder because they're right there in the country and nobody in Farmville knows what they're doing. But in Ashland, we're just right here. We're surrounded by the townspeople. But I think that can be a blessing and not necessarily, that. But anyway, what's next?
You mentioned the master plan. Where do you think a new campus center would be? In the same location? Or?
Good question, and one dear to my heart. I think it's going to be right where it is now, and I think that is not a good idea. I think that's a building. I think that's an awful building, and most people do. When working with the master planners, I said to them, can you tell me that you, in all of the schools you've worked at, that you have ever seen a worse campus center than ours? And they said no.
I worked in the campus center this year.
And so, it's like when you go to campus centers at other schools, it's really, really something important. James McGee is a big advocate of improving the campus center, and he says, of course, everybody in the college is always fighting for his or her ball of wax, that's where you want improvements to be made. Of course, I want a new bookstore. I've been promised one. We have the most pitiful bookstore in the state of Virginia. Nobody has a bookstore that small. Nobody has pegboard still up. But we don't even have any storage. We have no shipping and receiving. You all are so good to us because everything just comes in the middle of the store. And anyway, but our campus center is not a good one. And I'm a firm believer that the student union needs to be one of the show places of the campus. It needs to have everything that students need. And as James says, when faculty, and of course it is their job to argue for academic spaces. That world of academia is theirs. They want to do Copley, and they say that's where the students are. And then James says, and he reminds me, that you all spend 5% of your time here in classes, and you spent 95% outside of classes, and you need to have that. James had this suggestion, which I took to the master planners, and I don't know whether he did it in another meeting. And in fact, I even had Kevin Smith come over, who was president of senior class. I did it kind of clandestinely. It was when I think I had my foot in a cast, and I asked him to come over and help me, but I just wanted him to back me up. And my idea of where the campus center should be is connected to the library. And James is the first one that brought this to my attention. I went to a National Bookstore Committee meeting last week, and they said that is something that they realize is very important. A huge student union with connecting to the library so that people can go to study, or they can go to get to like a Starbucks that's in there, and they can go to the bookstore, they can go to the print shop, they can go to I think the neatest place to have it here would be on the side of the library where it slopes down here, like one over there, because the very fact that it slopes down could give 3 floors to the campus center. We could have a shipping and receiving that comes around. I know that Haley Hall will be gone. They say that the ground that Haley is on is worth more than the building. So in the master plan, there will not be Haley. Dr. Barrett stood out there and said, please don't take my building. But he was funny. He said, I've been here 35 years or whatever. But I know that. But I thought that would be great, that everything would be here, from the print shop and the mail room for the whole campus. For that, I just think it would be great to be over here connected to the library and use this building for something else. I think it's real hard. The camp, it's just not with all that glass and all, and there's there, and James envisioned something with like 21 student offices that other schools have, where people that are doing, students that are doing things for the college have an office to work in. And anyway, it's the worst. That's my opinion, and I feel really sad though right now they put the campus center right back where it was, with trying to connect it to Estes, which is fine. That's a dead space in there, and trying to extend it out a little more. You can't go too far out because of the Fountain Plaza. And the campus center, I think, if they were going to leave it there and do that connecting thing, the projected cost of that was something like $31 million, which makes me very sad. I mean, not the amount doesn't make me sad, but that means that that's probably going to be the last thing done on the master plan. I know we're going to be, and I think our students deserve a campus center before then. Plus, I'm getting I can't be here unless I'll probably mount the skies from my office in the bookstore. But I'll never see a new bookstore, I promise. But I want that being a part of the campus center. I would love for students to come here. It makes me sad when tours go through and they look at those mailboxes and they go, "This is it," and they go, "This is it."
Yeah.
Though they've made an effort to make the furniture better now, and it's making coffee is small. It's just not. That's, to me, that would be a top priority. But I don't know, because 31 million, you got to get a lot of donors together for that.
Yeah, we have new mailboxes. I don't know when
upstairs. And I don't know about that. I don't know how many people go upstairs. Kids are funny. Students don't like to even undo the mailbox. They like to go, James,
yes.
They like to go back there and make the mailroom people do them, which I don't have
in
to.
The mailroom.
Mailroom people do that, but James says no.
Mm-hmm.
Then, Kim, you had the easiest job in the world in the mailroom after you all got the mail up then, didn't you? Mm-hmm. Anyway, but I don't know. I wonder if people are going to go upstairs. I don't know. I think that you plan everything for your student union for a flow of traffic for easy as possible between classes and everything else, and that at least gives everybody. Does that give everybody an individual mailbox? Is that what it does? I guess it does.
I don't know.
We'll see how that works. Mm-hmm. My understanding is that they're going to try to use that in the fall, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. We'll see. But the mailboxes do look bad. But you can. I remember being on a committee with students talking about, and I was talking about how when one of the first places that a prospective student wants to see is a campus center.
Right. What
does it look like? A place that am I going to be? And then it used to be. Now more people spend time in the campus center. Other than that, who would want to spend time there? You can't really study there at night. The light's so bad. You got to go making coffee, and the lights are so dim, mm-hmm. and and it's. I don't know how you all do this. The people that sell rings and things, when you sit there and that light comes in, you can't even see people. It's just not conducive to people sitting around and having a good time. I mean, and actually socializing and networking with their fellow students. But in the post office and the James's office, all of that stuff is ridiculously small. Everything is. I'm disappointed that is going to be there. Maybe that will change. Who knows? Mm-hmm. I don't know. But maybe I'll win the lottery, but I have to buy a ticket first. And if I do, we will have a new campus center. I promise. Okay.
Yeah, during the 6 to midnight shifts, I'd only see maybe 10 people in the campus center.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not, yeah. And when prospectives come in, they go, why isn't there anybody in here? It's not. The campus center used to be, let me tell you what the campus center used to be about changes in the campus center. Basically, you can't change it too much. It's mm-hmm. the same thing. But in the part that's what we call the lobby of the campus center, it was carpeted. It was all carpeted, and it went down 3 steps down to a level. It had little tiers, and kids used to sit on those steps. Now, when I first came here, they had sculpture exhibits in here, and I don't know how wise that was, but didn't seem to bother the kids. We had a grand piano, and people could come in and play the piano, and over where making coffee is, there was a huge staircase that came down. Mm-hmm. I mean, it looked like it was a staircase that went up. Now, it had, I have to say, God knows, when we got the last light fixture in there, it looked almost like the one that was in there. That light fixture looks like Beam Me Up, Scotty, or something up to the, like it's going to suck you up in it. It's something from like a Swiss chalet or something back from the 60s, I think. But we did have a staircase. I think it's very strange. We have 2 exit thing. I mean, you go upstairs in exit doors. You don't have a staircase, and
they're hidden.
You don't, and people don't. Then I remember when Dr. Martin was here. That was when they filled in the campus center when her first came, and we had. I remember, Dave, the guys, the Mexican guys were out there filling it in with the concrete and stuff, and I know I was telling them to do, and I know I don't speak Spanish. I know they were saying something about what is that big old woman telling us now. But anyway, Yeah, and right at first we put that, they changed the tile, they put all the tile down and decided they didn't like it, and it never was what it was. You can't do but so much with that building. And thank you, Mr. Frank Brown, for giving it to us. It was good, I'm sure, back in 1971, but I don't think it's what we need for the future.
I'm surprised to hear that Haley won't be here in the master plan.
Haley, the Haley structurally, they looked at Haley, and that doesn't mean Haley's coming down now or anytime soon. But one of the first things that I understood that they did was with the old building, particularly with Copley as well, they investigated structurally, electrically, like heating wise and all that stuff, which buildings had a lot of life left in them. And Haley did not.
Right.
Haley did that. That is why the master planner truly said the ground it's on is worth more than the building. So, I know that Haley will not be there. You can't bring your grandchildren to see Haley. I know that. And that's probably wise and true.
Are there plans for any more dorms?
Yes. In fact, that's going to be our first thing. Here's something that's of great interest to me. I mean, I'm very anxious for us to get started with the new campaign. We have, I believe Macon Brock gave us money for maybe half of the new dorm, and the college is able to take out a loan for the other. If we had a location, I believe we could, and I don't know whether we've done, I'm sure we haven't contacted an architect, but whatever we do, theoretically, we could break ground on the dorm tomorrow. Now, ideally, it would be a dorm for seniors. I mean, and then that as it should be. But the question is where to put the dorm. Okay, now that we've got the master plan, have you looked at the master plan?
No.
The master plan, ideally, the master plan would close the street between the campus center and the library, which would be wonderful, and have that a walkway up there, but we don't know that could ever happen with the town. I mean, that would be a dream. But what the master planners do want is to close behind the campus center, which is not very attractive, in the parking lot over there. They want that to be a beautiful, like, promenade thing that students walk up, and it leads through campus from the other end of campus, and it's open, and it leads to the football stadium, which is turned to go north and south instead of east and west, and they're like big brick columns or an entryway going there, so you look through the campus at all these new buildings, and the picture of the campus center looks fine. I mean, it's just an exterior picture. That looks great, but I'm just concerned with whether you can do stuff inside of that. But that's where we're thinking. Now, the master plan puts new dorms around the football stadium, which is something that people do at a lot of schools, and it's neat, and the kids kind of like it, in that you're there and you look down on the football stadium, and I guess you can have balconies and come out and watch games or have little parties or whatever, but it's I saw a lot of the plans that they had done for other schools, and they had that. The Board of Trustees has been looking at this year, where do we put this dorm? And we need to do it. We need to start breaking some ground to show people that we're really getting ready to go, getting ready for President Lindgren to let us take off. One of the suggestions was across the tracks, down like maybe across from Wash Frank, I think. And then I don't think that's an ideal location. It might be, but I don't know. When the master planners came, this is interesting in regard to the railroad in the town. They said they were very dismayed by the fact that the campus was split by the railroad track, saying that the safety factor with that and all that. And when they got here, they realized that was just part of life at Randolph-Macon, and that people don't get hurt, and that was not a detriment necessarily to any plans, that unless they involved that the railroad track, that they didn't feel adverse to putting other things on the other side of the track. Now, I don't know about putting that dorm down there by Wash Front. That's mighty far away from everything else. But whether seniors would like it or not, whatever, I think maybe the reaction they got from some of those would be that wasn't ideal. So here's what they're talking about now, but I know that no decision has been made, but I know that that's the number one goal, I think, of the trustees now, is to find out where to put that dorm. If we went along with the master plan, then what we need to do really soon, like as soon as football season is over, is turn the football field around and build that dorm right there. Turning the football field around means you have to have donors that pay for the new football stadium. It means you have to move the baseball field over there, and it moves. And then I thought, and I do think we could get some donors for the stadium and build the dorm there. But then I was talking to John Lattis or somebody yesterday, and they were saying that would also involve closing that street by the soccer field. Now, you can't just overnight close something that's town property.
Right.
So, if that's the way we're going, there's some groundwork that's got to be laid first. I'm just anxious for it to get started. But I know that the first thing we will do will be a dorm. If the dorm is to be over there by the football field, then actually moving the football field would be the first thing. I mean, if you have any other good ideas where you think that dorm might be, you should tell President Lindgren. Because, but I do think it would be kind of neat. The students some of them who came to the master plan thing were responsive to that they like that idea of being able to be around the football field. So we'll see. But a dorm is coming soon. As soon as possible. As soon as they can get the groundwork done. All right. What's next?
Well, I would like to ask you a little bit about your involvement with the Women's Club of Ashland.
Oh, God. Who told you? Oh, Sarah told you about the Women's Club and
Ginger.
Carlene. Oh, and Ginger. Mm-hmm. Yes, Lord. Ginger.
She gave me the list.
Oh, Lord. The Women's Club, and you know about the Women's Club of Ashland. The woman, and and that's a great connection to the college, because the founders of the Women's Club of Ashland, which was like 113 years ago, I think we are the second oldest women's club in the state. I think somebody in Petersburg thinks they're older, but they might not be. Anyway, they were primarily faculty wives, or the president's wife, and Mrs. Blackwell. The Blackwell house is over where the business office is. Mrs. Blackwell, I believe, was president of the Women's Club for like 25 years. She was quite something. And then a lot of, if you go back the Women's Clubs, not the minutes I wrote when I was secretary. I missed the getting bound in this one. That's the one job you never want to do. You have to write minutes of it every week. Writing papers is nothing compared to being secretary. But the old minutes, whatever, cut off before they were mine, are here, and they're bound. And we decided to keep them at Randolph-Macon because this was such an important part. It was neat. When we celebrated our 100th anniversary, we did papers on the old ladies, the old girls who started it. And I did one on a real character, but people did one. I remember Eloise did one on Mrs. Blackwell, which was Eloise Piccolo, my neighbor, which was really, really neat. And let me recommend her to somebody to interview, Eloise Piccolo. I told you that before. But she did Mrs. Blackwell, and she can tell you about that and cute stories about Dr. Blackwell. And thank God for women holding everything together. The men were, Dr. Blackwell felt like he was, and have you ever seen his picture? If you go in there where Wendy Farmer is, do you know there's that big picture of him?
Yeah.
That's Dr. Blackwell looking over his house. He was actually a student here. He was a young student here. He was a KA. I know that because they talk about that. I've heard my husband say that. And then he was a student. He graduated, and then he became president of the college. He and Mrs. Blackwell lived in the Blackwell house, and she took care of it. And when men felt, well, I'm sure women too, but I just know I know Mrs. Blackwell never went to any healing springs to feel better. Dr. Blackwell took off and took a little rest at the healing springs, and she was taking care of the household in the college. And there's some cute letters. They wrote letters to each other all the time, and there's at the end of each letter, from Dr. Blackwell to his wife, there's a little notation, and nobody knows what it is. It's almost like if you were like a sonnet notation, or like a book of the Bible, like 3:13:26, like a book about, but nobody know. People have tried to see if they could go through and find a sonnet. It was more than that, and nobody knows what their little secret thing was that they said to each other. But she wrote him neat letters while he was recouping at the hot springs about, the college had brought her the $30 a year they had to live on or something like that, and she was raising stuff in the garden and taking care of the goats over there in that house. And I think about that often every week when I have a meeting with John Lattis, and in that meeting I think about just the things I learned from the Women's Club about Mrs. Blackwell over there taking care of things in that house. But the Women's Club started out as, well, it's always been a literary group, but there was a book club too, and they passed around books and magazines and things, and we have kept almost all the rules. As Ginger will tell you, my God, now if you get an invitation to the Women's Club of Ashland and you turn it down, you will never get another one. So you have to think long and hard. If you get invited and it's not a very good time in your life, you better accept anyway if you want to be a member later. Because you don't. And if we used to let people take a leave of absence. We don't now. If you, for some reason, get out of the Women's Club, you can ask if you're in good standing and like you have a job that takes you out of town and you can't be there, whatever, you can request that later on when things are a little easier in your life, if a new member is to be decided upon, that your name can be entered in there. And we've done that, and we brought the people back. There are always, what do we have? Always 35 members. We meet exactly at 4 o'clock on Thursdays. Flavia Owen, and that's why I was so anxious. As soon as Ginger came, I said to him, Ginger's got to be a member of the Women's Club, but you can't say that. It's very crazy. You just invite them to meetings and introduce them to people, and when that's our secret voting procedure. You can't do, but it's funny. It's hard. People just have to gradually get to know people. But particularly Flavia Owen, Flavia's portrait up here. Flavia used to get on her bicycle. That was long before I was in the Women's Club. Get on her bicycle and with her fox furs on and ride off to the Women's Club meeting from the library. She always dressed up for it. But it is it's something that's it greatly enriches my life. We have a lot, and we're glad we've got Ginger. We're glad we have faculty. We have professors. We have faculty wives, but we have other people. We have the mayor of our town as a member of the Women's Club, and we have we do it. But you got to go every Tuesday afternoon from 4 to 5, and then we have teas and we have things. But it's neat. Now Ashland has two old clubs like that. They have the Women's Club, and then they have the Hanover Club. Do you know about that? And you'll never get to go in there. The Hanover Club is right off campus. Do you know where Christine Brown lives, in the log cabin? Mm-hmm. Okay. Right across from and this is something funny that she did, right across from the log cabin, there's a little house, and nobody it's just a little white frame house, and it has a front porch. And you won't see any activity there except one night a month. But it's over there, and Christina kept trying to take things over. She took things to all of her neighbors to introduce herself. And she said something to me about it. I just don't understand. Sometimes they have great parties over at that house, but when I go over there, nobody's there. And I said, Christina, you can't go in there. That's the Hanover Club. And that is indeed, my husband was the president of the Hanover Club last year. That is indeed the oldest men's social club in the state of Virginia. That one definitely is. Strangely enough, they used to let the Women's Club meet there in the 40s. They do not let any women come in there anymore. I asked when I was doing my paper for our centennial thing, couldn't we have one meeting in there? And they said no. It's really, they gamble in there, but it's not primarily that. Like upstairs, they just go to get together and eat supper once a month on the last Friday of each month. But they are very proud of the fact they own that house, and that Ashland has the oldest men's social club in the state. And we are vastly proud of the Women's Club of Ashland. It's not the Women's Club, it's the Women's Club of Ashland. It's not the Ashland Women's Club. Mm-hmm. Women's Club of Ashland. And we've got to get that right. But anyway, those are important things. The Junior Women's Club, which is not at all, that's affiliated with like the Henry Clay Women's Club. It's not a literary thing at all, like that. And the JCs and the Kiwanis and the Lions. Ashland's got very active civic groups. In fact, and we have another thing that the college always helps, the parade. Ashland Parade goes right through the college the Christmas parade.
Yes.
And I had a float in that one year, but that's kind of hard because it's near exams and it's Thanksgiving and whatever. It's not a good time to make kids like Randolph-Macon students wait on a float. You have to wait for 2 hours before you go and then get off. When you're getting ready for exams, it's not a good time to to have to devote 6 hours to doing nothing. But we do like the Ashland Christmas Parade, and it has horses and fire trucks and everything else.
It goes right through the freshman village.
Goes right. It does. Does it go down? It goes down that far too. Yeah, and the freshman village, which we used to call motel dorms, you never called it that. I mean, I still call them. We go there down the motels, and parents mothers' eyes used to have panic-stricken visions. And then when I said, "Oh, your child is living in one of the motels," and she went, "What do you mean? My daughter's living in?" I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry," because they did resemble when they were built back during the war, with the old motels that we were used to, where a car just drove up to your room. Right. You know, and so when they did look like they were never motel, but calling it the freshman village is good because that is much better. But there used to be, when I remember when my husband was here, and even, oh goodness, when I was here in '85, they still had married students. Those behind the freshman dorms, one of them is like the Leap Center or something. Is that still there?
No.
Okay, well, whatever, those two brick buildings back there, one of them used to be the infirmary. For a while, after there was an infirmary that was up by the football field, and that was torn down when they built the Brock Center. And there was an infirmary back there. But before then, that was where married students lived in those houses. And there used to be, married students were in there when my husband was in college. And when, in '85, when I came, about 88 or 90, no, I was 90 or 91, there were married students living in there. In fact, they give that award. Who got it this year? There's at Convocation. There's an award that they give to people. Now they just give them to people who date each other for a long time because we don't have any married. I mean, if you have married students, you get it, but nobody lives on campus. No, you don't. There are no such things as dorms for married students anymore.
Were there children on the campus?
No, I don't think so. There might have been a baby born when. Yeah, there were not. In fact, there was a girl who was here in the '90s who she was born here. I mean, her parents were living in the married back in that area because she left when she came here, and she said, "I was actually born here." I mean, I think she was born in the hospital in Richmond, but she came home here. But that was not as often. But sometimes people did. They lived in the dorms for a couple of years, and they had a baby. They did have those here. Yeah. It was neat. I'm trying to think. The big deal has always been the Hampden-Sydney weekend. And it's a fierce rivalry as far as that goes. I can tell you though that there are no people that are better friends than the coaches. When the day that my son was killed. That afternoon, by the time that I got home, before that night was over, the Hampden-Sydney coaches were at my house. And the people from they were our big rivals, but they came. Well, they had wanted Tad to come and play sports for them, and they thought they had him, and then he changed his mind. But anyway, they are, it's a good rivalry, but we really care about them, and it's really funny that my oldest son played tennis in Hampden-Sydney, and Joe Bush, who was his tennis coach then, who was also the football coach. He's the athletic director, and I have so much trouble getting down to the field at Hampden-Sydney because I can't walk, but now I can do better. And he's always so kind to look out for me, and he meets me when I get there for the Hampden-Sydney football game in a golf cart and takes me down to the bleachers down there. Well, this year when my leg was really bad, no, it was last year, I think I was after another surgery, and my husband called up there and said, "Joe, now we've got to get Barclay down to the field," and whatever. We died laughing. We got up there, and Kimberly, there is a sign made in their print shop that said reserved for President Lindgren, Randolph-Macon College. Then there's one that says reserved for the president of Hampden-Sydney College, and then there's one that says reserved for Robin Barclay DuPriest. And we were dying laughing, and I said, "Oh my God," because they do nice things for us. It's a good rivalry, but I mean, we look out for each other. The people, we want to beat them and everything, but but it's a good rivalry. But anyway, I thought that's great. Either Bob Lindgren is going to think that Rob and I wrote a huge check to Hampden-Sydney that day. We got a parking place up there. But anyway, that was nice. That was a funny story because we look out for that. All right, ask me something else.
What do you feel about Ashland being the center of the universe?
It definitely is. We were the first ones to claim that it was the center of the universe. And I do know that I think there are about 11 Ashlands throughout the state. One of our Women's Club papers that Betty Carroll Stevenson did, who is on the committee for the 150th, she did a paper on all the other Ashlands in the country. And some of them stopped through here afterwards and they took our bumper sticker. Do you know that?
Yes.
They took it and then they printed ones up for their own. So we were the center of the universe, and now some of the other Ashlands are using it too. But our old mayor, Dick Gillis, who was a graduate of Randolph-Macon College, if I believe, he was, he wore a cowboy hat. He was quite something. He was, I'm trying to think of what his job was. He was the head of some state thing. But anyway, he said, this great town of Ashland in the center of the universe, and that's why we sing, when we sing that song that I was talking about, it's Ashland, Ashland, center of the universe, Ashland, Virginia, my hometown, just a whistle on the RF&P, but you'll never find a better place to be. And then I sang the other part earlier about being best people live on both sides of the tracks. Anyway, it's a pretty neat little place to live. And then a big deal with the history of Ashland was when King's Dominion came. Oh, Lord. Now, we weren't that... if I had to pick a time when I think things started changing around here, it was when King's Dominion came. When that was built, and the first year that was opened, I think, was the year of the bicentennial, because while I was working as a chairman and all that things, we got season tickets, passes for my husband and the boys, and they went up there every single day, every single night, free. And then, and while I was working on stuff, but it was when that came, then suddenly the motels came and all the fast food places and everything came, because there would be no reason to have all the stuff here, even though it's on 95. There wouldn't be any reason to have this. King's Dominion was the real reason that brought about the transformation in this town, a huge one. Plus, it gave people, kids a place to work in the summertime. And a lot of Macon kids used to work there. Some of them that would stay here in the summer would just work cash control at night up there. I can remember sometimes they'd work jobs on campus and they'd go up there and work at night. I haven't been up there in years and years, but I used to a lot. But that was a transformative thing. It was.
Was it a good transformation?
I think, well...
Along 95?
Yeah, I guess so. It made, and I think, it brought the snipe. I mean, it brought all of the, if you like that strip with all of the motels and all that things, it certainly brought a lot of revenue to town. It brought a change to our town. The whole face of our town changed. Ultimately, I think if you go back to King's Dominion, it was a slow progression, and not so slow sometimes, to what we have now with the Walmart and all the traffic and all the things. I don't think the students at Randolph-Macon, and I am certainly not, as ever aware of how close we are to 95. I know how close we are to 95, but I mean the impact of being that close to 95. I remember when I was talking to campus safety about things, that they're always aware of that too, that there are bad people that are really close to you all. And I remember serving on a grand jury when they brought in all the cases, and the police officers came in to decide whether to send them on to court or whatever we did. I was just amazed at when the police officer said, you don't realize what a drug card and what a weapons card this is from New York City down to Miami and back, and that something like every fourth car would have drugs or weapons in it. And I just don't think about that, because I think about, but that is something that I know our campus safety thinks about, and I know our town police are ever aware of that. So they must be doing a good job, because we don't, but they are. I mean, like they said for us in the bookstore, we changed our policy a couple of years ago. I used to be open the bookstore by myself on weekends. Sometimes now I don't even do the cash register, but we still had a policy that we had to have two people in there in case somebody came off of the streets, in case somebody came, like the sniper thing. I mean, that kind of brought that home to us. The idea that those people would be here in our town, that they would be shooting at people at our town at Ponderosa. But we are, and I think that President Lindgren, I've heard him talk about this, he realizes that from a marketing standpoint, the proximity to 95 is great. And I know that we actually have a billboard. Have you seen it? It's hard to see
No.
a billboard coming down after Fredericksburg because it's like there are 5 billboards, but you work your way up. But there ought to be something that says to people, hey, within 5 minutes on 95, you could take a little break and go over here and see the best liberal arts school in the world. I mean, that's not what it says, but I mean, utilizing that. And I think that was one thing when the branding people came here and we went through that branding procedure, that publicity, they said they thought a billboard would be good just because they said, think of the thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that go by here, that's something that makes them come in and take a look at Randolph-Macon. I also know that we do have now, too, at the airport, though I didn't see it when I was there last, a Randolph-Macon College ad thing in one of those lighted airport things, which is good. It's important to market our school, I think. I think that President Lindgren realizes the importance of that and is willing to spend some money. I have often wanted to do that. I think Hampden Sydney does a bang-up job of that. They put big full-page Hampden Sydney ads, beautiful shots of their campus in Time and Newsweek and Sports Illustrated. And the very idea that I open my Newsweek when I come in a major national publication and there's a Hampden Sydney ad says to me, this is a really top-class school waiting to do it. Now, people don't realize that, of course, they're not putting that in Newsweeks in California. They're targeting just the area of the maze that they and we get most of our students from. But to me, that says great. One time they called and said, why don't we, for one of our big games, put an ad in Sports Illustrated with things about our 2 schools. And that was before President Lindgren came. And I remember the response was, we didn't want to spend any money on anything then. But, now they might be responsive to that. But I think we do need to, I remember I think it was when President Lindgren was having his interviews when we went to listen to the different people, and he said, it doesn't do any good to have the best product in the country if nobody knows about it, which is true, And I think people are more and more aware of Randolph-Macon College, and your degree will, as important as it is already, will even be more meaningful as everybody knows about Randolph-Macon. I was delighted that we had Tim Russert come to be our graduation speaker. I'm a big Tim Russert fan, and man, that hurt me really hard. My older son looks like Tim Russert, except 20 years younger, and he laughs about that, and it was hard. It was very sad, but I was so happy because Hampden Sydney and Washington Lee and everybody, they always have famous people. We rarely have famous people, and now I think we're in a new direction. That was important. That put us on the map, and it was his last thing I can tell that we have certainly had a boost in our DVD sales after his death, people just wanting to have a DVD of Tim Russert speaking to the graduates at Randolph-Macon. So that was a big deal. It was sad that it was his last one. All right, more. Give me more.
What do you think makes Ashland so special?
I think it's the people are so friendly. I used to think it was the size. Of course, we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger now in all, not just business aspects, but the number of people. And I think it's really funny. I used to think that I knew everybody in town. I certainly don't. And there's certainly a lot of the movers and shakers in town. All of us old folks, those of us over 60, we laugh and say these are the people. This is the future of Ashland, and that's as it should be. I still think there's that still wonderful small town atmosphere. There are a lot of people who, particularly in my neighborhood, who walk. They walk their dogs, they ride their bikes. Randolph-Macon students do, and it's a really friendly atmosphere. You got everything you want. You can go to dinner here. The Ashland, what we liked, I liked the proximity to Richmond. I didn't want the Walmart. I wanted to go somewhere else and keep our little small atmosphere. I think it's neat that we're close to Washington, and I think the train is something else. It gives it is our signature thing in the town. The whole town grew up around the train. When the RF&P came through, in fact, my house, the deed to my house, to the property that my house is on, 1889, says that I can have a half-price commuter ticket as long as I own the house to Richmond and back. Of course, there's no commuter train anymore, but if there were, I could have half price. And it also says if I sell spirits in my house that the deed to my land will go immediately back to the RF&P Railroad. Of course, with the ABC stores, liquor stores, nobody's supposed to sell any spirits in their house. So anyway, without that. But, yeah, everything was around the railroad. I'm 2 blocks off the railroad in the historic district. We call our part of it the hysterical district because it's more fun. We have a lot of fun over there. I think Ashland's all about families. It's all about families doing things together, and it's all about I think everybody in Ashland feels like they're a big family. Then going to the kids' ball games and athletic contests, and it's all that's important. But it certainly has changed. I don't like when it changes too much. I don't like too much growth or uncontrolled growth, and I think we're trying to do things about that now. I don't like any empty storefronts. I like to see people succeed, like small businessmen succeed, but I think it's that people care about each other and look out for each other. You can tell when weddings and parties and funerals and stuff, they're always, people always know what they want to do that they can help you. What can they do to help you? What can they do to make your life a little bit better? And I remember I couldn't find the key to my front door for 18 years after we moved in, so I never locked my front door. I have neighbors who never lock their door now. One time we had a scare, and one New Year's Eve, people came and stole jewelry and things like that. I lock my doors every day now, but there are plenty of people that don't because they just don't see any need to. I like, what was I going to say? I think the college is part of being, you can't separate the college from Ashland. That's one thing that's really good. I think it's good that Ashland has that Y and they have that public swimming pool that you can get a membership. It used to be they only had the Hanover Country Club, which is a very nice country club, and I used to be a member of that. I never was a member that bought stock to vote and all that stuff. One time they were trying to expand the membership, and they let a whole bunch of us in. And that was a great babysitter for your kids and do that. But I was delighted that we do have the park here, the DeJarna Park, where everybody can have access to, to a swimming pool, and we have a swim team there. I would be very, very upset, and I know a lot of people in Ashland would be, if Amtrak would stop the train run, which is something, they're considering, right? Rerouting it. We have to learn about, I went around with the master planners. I was in a golf cart because I couldn't walk, but they were. We went all through downtown Ashland and rode all around and trying to relate everything to the college. One of their big focus points that day was, what do you consider to be the real entrance to Randolph-Macon College? And we were saying, well, we really don't have, we try up there by the track to have that little entrance, but the people enter it by the Welcome Center, and that is an awful place. How could we ever do, they were saying the traffic, you know how it is. If you come down and you got the Welcome Center on your left and the little chapel on your right, if you're going to make a left turn, forget it. People never come and we were saying that could never be made into a stoplight because the streets don't run into each other. The post office does. That would not be a really, really good entrance. Down on number 1, down there by Hardy's, really wouldn't be a very good entrance. It would be too far to go to the college. The thing that up by the railroad tracks, that's not, it's just the physical plant. I mean, like that entrance. But one of the ideas that most people seem to jump on that when we were having the meetings with the planners was the original entrance to the college was on the railroad tracks in the middle of them, opening on to if you've seen those old lithographs of the college, they opened onto like the center of the college, and people just got off the train, I guess, and they walked into the college when there weren't many, back then when there weren't any automobiles and things, and they were talking about the possibility of widening the streets, widening Railroad Ave. We used to always call it just that Center Street, but now we call it Railroad Ave. Widening that and letting people come in there and come in like Mary Branch, where Mary Branch would be redoing Mary Branch. That's part of the thing. Keeping the residence halls upstairs, but maybe downstairs having a welcome center and admissions and what, so that you would come in to the front campus. That's where you'd go and you could park, and then you'd go all over campus after that. Particularly would be neat if we had that thoroughfare going to the football. I mean, you should look at the master plan things. It's real fancy. It makes you just drool thinking if this could ever be that way. But the railroad's really important. That little railroad station, have you ever been in there?
No.
You need to go in there. That's a really...
I'm gonna ride the train home this week.
When you go in the railroad station, it was designed by a man, Duncan Lee, I think, who did it. Was a famous Richmond architect back in that time, and it is one of the good restored. Well, it's in good shape. Examples of what the train station used to be like in times of segregation. Then all the African American people were on the left and all the white people were on the right, and they couldn't even buy the tickets together. And it's part of a life that I knew. Like at my train station, my boys couldn't believe that I grew up, but I mean, I thought I was pretty young then too. I mean, that I grew up in the segregated South, but I certainly did. Which is another thing that I'm delighted with at Randolph-Macon, is that our minority enrollment is improving. Really important to me, and I would, I know I've jumped off on another subject now, but go to that train station because those people know everything. It's a wonderful resource for people in the town of Ashland who bring any visitors in there. They're very knowledgeable. I decided one day to go in and be a guide, so that because the little lady never got to go to church on Sunday, I said I would never do it again. They asked me questions about the battlefields of Civil War. I didn't know anything about how to get there, somewhere in Richmond. And I said I can't do it again, but that's a good place to go. And they'll show you. It's neat. It's what it's like, and where a lot of people, and it's neat that you buy your ticket and you can get on the train there and get right off the, when we had graduation on front campus, the train would blow, the engineer would blow the whistle, and we'd have to oftentimes stop. I remember the kids at Randolph-Macon used to be able to... You've lived in the freshman village. That's the only place you've lived, right?
I'm living in the senior apartments now.
Right.
Yeah.
But you've never been on front campus.
No.
The kids who live on front campus can tell you, or at least they could in the past, like how long it takes a Tropicana train to go through and how long it takes this train. And they know, because you have to gauge yourself about that. You know, it's funny that we have a campus, like I can be late for a meeting with my boss over in the Blackwell house because a train will suddenly come, and I'm stuck for a long time. I remember when they were filming a movie, and that's some things that they've done in Ashland. They've filmed quite a few movies in Ashland. Ashland's a neat town to film a movie in. They've filmed movies on Main Street and used the buildings, like, was it Ashland Coffee and Tea? Before that became that, and Cross Brothers Grocery. They filmed, they took two houses and made them kind of spooky houses, or burned out looking houses on other streets. One was on College Ave, but at the railroad is what reminded me of this. They made a movie in the KA house, and it was a TV movie about the guy who started Alcoholics Anonymous, which everybody laughed about that was made in a fraternity house anyway. But who was the actress that was so mean? It wasn't Kim Basinger. It was, I'll think about it in a minute. Blonde hair. Anyway, the thing was, she was not very... They told the KAs, and this was probably back in 90s, sometimes in the 90s, maybe mid-90s, that they could stay in the house, they could sit on the stairs, and they could watch the film, and if they didn't interrupt at certain times of day. And I remember it was... I can't believe I can't think what her name was. I'll think about it later. That'll make it more meaningful. But anyway, she was really, really not too pleasant and wanted to get on with the scenes. And they said to the man, the director, well, on the Tropicana, every time a train came, you have to stop. The Tropicana train, I think you'd better wait. And she went, this is ridiculous. It can't be more than 2 minutes. Shut up, or something like that. And they were looking at each other like, she'll find out. And they said they loved it when the Tropicana train went on, and it went on, and it went on, and it went on, and it went on. And she was pretty steamed about that. But anyway, that was fun. We were, I don't think we've made any movies. They made a movie in the old gym. Mm-hmm. I call it the old gym.
Right.
There. And I remember, and then they came and got some of our boys to be in a movie that was actually filmed at Hampton, Sydney. They took our football players and they were part of it. And that was one of our, Buzzy Yarborough was our football player. This is a totally another subject, who saw the ghost in Wash Frank, and I saw him right after he did. What made me think about that was the railroad and the movies, but he came when we had that piano in the campus center. Buzzy was a football player, came in there and he sat down, and he had never played a piano, and he discovered that he could play by ear. And he'd sit in the campus center and play that. Well, Wash Frank had been just restored not too long before that. And in Wash Frank where that piano is, it's usually roped off like in the, is it in the Franklin room? Because not where we have the debates usually, but in the other room. And it kind of, they have that, it's roped off up there because it's some rare piano or somebody gave us and you're not supposed to touch it. Well, Buzzy was a football player, and Buzzy lived in the Lambda Chi house, and he discovered that he could play. Well, after football practice, he would come, and he would sneak in before they locked it up if nobody was there, and he would play that piano and Wash Frank. Sometimes he'd keep on playing until it got dark, because he didn't want anybody to ever know he was in there doing it, because he wasn't supposed to touch it. And while he was playing was when he looked over, and you know where that thing is. And on that little thing right there, there was a man sitting there who was in late 19th century garb and very kind of standard nice garb. And then there was a guy that sat over there that kind of, my understanding was, if I remember, Buzzy told me, that looked like kind of like a farm boy over there. And they sat there, and he said they sat and they looked at him and they listened to him play. And he said, the expression, the hair standing up on the back of your neck could not be more right. He said, I have never had a sensation like that in my life. And he said, and then gradually he stopped and went out, and they went away. And then we had at on campus then a lady named Ricky Fain, who was the switchboard operator. We used to have a switchboard in, this is gone. You have never seen this. In Peel Hall, where the registrar's office is. There used to be a desk out there, and that lady answered the phone for the whole college and connected people to the different departments. Now Campus Safety does that. But Ricky was that, and Ricky was quite something. She had these long skirts, and she kind of looked gypsy-ish. She was wonderful, but she didn't say she was a medium, but she said something like that. But she wouldn't use that word. Anyway, she went over and exorcised Wash Frank, and Dr. Scanlon, who wrote the history of our college, Dr. Scanlon would say often when he was up at night working, he could hear the footsteps up and down the hall, and that indeed Buzzy told him, he talked to Buzzy about the ghost, and after Ricky came in and did her thing, that the ghosts were no longer there, but that they really were. And Buzzy told me, he swore to me, I don't know where Buzzy is now, but he was... He did. He said they were there, and Ricky said it was something like one of them was a Randolph-Macon student in the late 19th century that something happened to him, and the other one was a local farm boy who'd always wanted to go to Randolph-Macon but could never come. Anyway, they're gone, but Buzzy said he saw him, and I mean, and I, they're the only ghosts that I know about. People make up a lot of other ones, but they're the only ones there. Now, Ricky did used to say that she would not go into Pace Hall, which is Pace Armstead Hall, because she had a strange feeling about that, and she thought all these bats flew over the top of it, and Ray Berry told me he had never seen any bats fly over there in his life. Anyway, Dr. Payne wasn't too keen on Ricky telling her ghost stories to the trustees' wives when they came. You entertain the trustees' wives, or husbands in this case, while they're having the meeting. And I don't think he thought that having somebody talk about getting rid of the ghost was real academic. So Ricky did, and Ricky's not here anymore. She actually worked, had your job. She did the mailroom over in the campus center for a while. But anyway, yeah, and the one it was fun. We'd have like trailers with the actors and the actresses in them around campus and stuff like that, because this was the perfect town for it. And that the name of the movie that had the old gym in it was called The Contender. and that was a good movie. And anyway, it's fun. It's fun to have those people. We wanted to see the stars come around Randolph-Macon College. I've forgotten what the question was, and you tell me, Kim, if you want me to just stop and just answer questions instead of keeping talking.
No, it's all right.
I mean, this is the way I just go off onto random thoughts all the time, so it's hard to keep me on track.
I think Major Payne was filmed partially here.
Was it really?
I think so. I think that was the movie where they made the houses spooky.
Okay, yeah, maybe that was, and they made the houses, but and they did those, I think you're right about that. And we did that, and that was fun. Oh, we'd love to go to, and I wasn't an extra on anything, but some people were, and they'd have all the, I was trying to think if there was, I was in a movie on campus one time, one of our students, and this was kind of fun, Luke Fannin, who went on to graduate school, he went to film studies and graduate school, and he decided to come back and make a movie, and he had Joe Mattis, and I was in it. I wasn't a very good actress. I remember it was my very first foot surgery. I had a cast on, and it was called, I don't even think of the name of it now. Anyway, it was funny. I mean, he had people on campus, and we acted like he just had like a regular video camera. But they had things, and they did cut and stop, and I can appreciate interruptions about that because we were doing things on front campus and the trains would come through all the time and we'd have to redo them. They did scenes in the library. We used the library a lot. We used the cafeteria. We used, Estes. We used that. Now, Estes used to be very different. That's something else. We used to have like the senior banquet and stuff would be in Estes, and now I don't even know whether we have it. I think the president just has people to his house, which is fine. We didn't have all those stations like Miss Connie's station and all that stuff. They can't be moved without a lot of difficulty.
Right.
And it used to be fun to have dinners in there, candlelight dinners and things like that. You can't, it's hard to do that because all of the salad things and that, when you don't think about some things when you change the designs of buildings, or like when they built the campus center, they didn't think about how impractical some things were. But, it's fine. I think I don't know what I think. Ask me something else. Or what, is my time up? What about,
about 2 hours.
We've done 2 hours? Kim, and I haven't even answered your questions.
No, I'm out of questions. We've covered a lot in this interview.
Oh, okay. I mean, is there anything else?
Nope, not that I can see. We've covered practically everything.
Oh, okay. I do it. I love it.
It's been a lovely interview.
Oh, but shoot. Well, thank you. I love it. I love working here. And the question that the people, it's really funny, the people in town, this just reminds me of the last thing, the people who do come to sporting events or things, or they think that like these are superstars at our local division, they'll go, do you really mean like you really knew like Megan Silver? And I go maybe we talk to her every day in the bookstore, and they go, oh my God, they think college students are really neat, and particularly athletes and people in plays and and they go, and you really they love the chance to meet them. Sarah Wright doesn't have much chance, but nothing would make her happier than for college students. I'd like for them to go visit her regularly. And so I'm so glad she will talk about the contact she's had with you forever. She will always do that, and that'll be good. But anyway, the college I loved it. I can't imagine anything better. And everybody says to me, though, don't those kids get younger looking to you every year? And I go, they never look any younger. They're always 18 to 22, but the parents do. When I came at age 38, I was the age of the parents. Now at 61, the parents look like babies to me. But anyway, I really do think that I have the best job in the whole world. I don't have to give any grades.
Don't have to grade any papers.
Don't have to grade any papers, and don't have to make anybody mad about the grades. You have to make, as soon as we get through selling those expensive textbooks, which we don't select,
right,
and we price them just according to the national guidelines. But other than that, what could be more fun? And it certainly has been a place that has given a lot back to me. It has made, the college has been very good to me and to my family. And plus that's just it. I love it. And I'll be sad, but I'm wearing down. But anyway, I thank you. I think this is a great thing you're doing, and I'm excited that you're doing this for the 150th anniversary. and for your, God, you got to do a surf presentation about this?
Yes.
Oh, good. You can do it. Let me shut up. So, have you got to interview somebody else right now?
No,
Nobody else today?
not until 2.
Who are you interviewing to?
Kathy. She's in the women's club. Is it Daughtry?
Kathy Darting. Now, she's also now a professor, married to a professor, and she's teaching here. And she has lived, and
I didn't know that. I'm going to have to ask her about that.
Yeah. You didn't know she was teaching here now? Or you didn't know her husband was Greg Darty, our professor?
I didn't know she was teaching here.
She's teaching here. She's teaching our intermediate Latin courses. And ask her she was a classroom teacher. She went to be an administrator in the county. Then she went back to that. Then she came over here. But ask them about the house they live in, which
the old
was
schoolhouse.
The schoolhouse,
Yeah.
yes, because that's really, really neat. And and she's great, and she'll come over and buy Vera Bradley stuff from me, and so that's good. But anyway, that'll be great. All right, thank you, and I have enjoyed this, and you're a great
Me too.
interviewer because you just
Thank
let
you
me keep
very
talking
much.
talk.